This is Brighter Rays, and today we're looking at Genesis 28, 1 through 2 in our study called The Blessing Confirmed. And let's begin here. At the end of chapter 27, Rebekah files her complaint with Isaac that if Jacob were to marry one of the women of the land, her life would be worthless. Isaac has now come to his senses and has given up his foolish and disobedient desire to see Esau be the chosen of God. He has repented of his actions and now takes leadership of the family as he rightfully should. Isaac pulls his son aside and gives him 3 commands. So here's the 3 commands. The first one, no Canaanite women. We talked about this idea before. This command was rooted in the spiritual idea. Abraham and Isaac are not racist here. That's not who they are. There's nothing physically wrong with the women of that area. The problem is that these women were descendants of Noah's son Ham and grandson Canaan. They were a people cursed by God. God told Abraham that one day the iniquity of this people would come to its end and his wrath would be poured out on them. These people had turned away from God, the God of their father Noah, and had turned to false gods and demon worship. Now, Paul picks up this idea in New Testament when he says, "What partnership has righteousness with lawlessness? Or what fellowship has light with darkness? What accord has Christ with Belial? Or what portion does a believer share with an unbeliever? What agreement has the temple of God with idols?" Find that in 2 Corinthians 6. So there he is comparing the 2 sides to show that these 2 things ought not be linked together. Because in reality, they can't be linked together. They must be separate. And so here, Isaac, Jacob, they must be separate from the Canaanites. They cannot link themselves together with these people. There's no accord between the Canaanites and the God of Israel, the God of Jacob, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac. There's two completely different things here. The second command is that he needs to live in his grandfather's house. Now, this was the command that Rebekah gave to Jacob back in chapter 27. Esau was breathing murderous threats, and Rebekah told Jacob that he should flee to her brother Laban until Esau had a chance to calm down. She tells him that Jacob needs to stay there until she sends for him. Unfortunately for Rebekah, that day never came. And so Isaac tells his son that he should go to Rebekah's family, to the house of Bethuel, her father. But his command is not tied to Esau here. When Isaac goes to Jacob about going to Mesopotamia, it's not linked to his safety. He's not telling him to run for or to flee for safety. No, it's a command. He's saying you need to go here and find yourself a wife. And so, he's saying basically the same thing that. The command is the same that Rebekah gave to Jacob, but when Isaac commands it, he's linking it to the idea of getting married. You need to go get married. Dude, you're like in your 70s. It's time to get married now. So that's Isaac's command. And what does he say? He says the third command is to marry a cousin. So Isaac says that Jacob should take a wife from one of the daughters of Laban, his mother's brother. It's very specific. How many daughters does Laban have? We'll find out. He only has 2, so not much of a choice there. So he's really telling Jacob, you got to go marry one of your cousins here. Now, apparently Isaac and Rebekah have had more communication back with the homeland than Abraham did, because Abraham really didn't, for a long time, didn't really know what was going on with his family back at home. But Isaac knows that Laban has daughters. Otherwise, it'd be kind of silly. Like, go marry one of Laban's daughters. Well, guess what? He gets there and there's no daughters. Obviously, he's got some kind of communication going back and forth with the family back at home. Maybe Rebekah stayed in touch with her family. He knows that. He sends, Laban's got some daughters, go marry one of them. And Isaac knew that there was at least multiple daughters. So the journey that Jacob is being sent on is a mission to marry one of his cousins. That's the goal. That's what he's supposed to do. And so that's the beginning of the story here. And, it's kind of interesting I thought it was interesting when Isaac sends, when he's sending Jacob away, he's not saying, hey, you need to run because Esau wants to kill you. Now, does he know this? I don't know. It doesn't say that he knows that. But, maybe he was encouraged by Rebekah to say, hey, you need to send Jacob to go get married. I don't know. You're dying. He's got the blessing now. Now it's time for him to make a family. The guy is 77 years old, which is pretty amazing to think about. But I guess, if you lived 140 some years old, then you're only middle-aged. He's like in his equivalent of like his 40s. So, he waited till he was older man to get married. For us, like 77, well, that's like elderly. But for Jacob, I'm guessing it wasn't, because the dude lives until his 140s. So, he's like middle-aged. So it's not really that weird, I guess. But, so there he is. He's off. He's an older, obviously he's lived for a while. So he should. That's what is strange to me too. Like the weeping and the kind of craziness that happens with these men. And they're like in their 70s. So, I don't know. Different culture, I guess. But that's the end of our study for today. So we'll come back next time and we'll take a look at verses 3 through 5 here in Genesis chapter 28.